Well, I loved playing baseball when I was a boy. I guess I started when I was about 7 or so. We used to play out in Central Park in New York City. And my dad took me to my first game when I was 8 years old in 1950, a night game between the Phillies and the Giants at the Polo Grounds. He was a Philly fan, having grown up in Chester, Pennsylvania. So he wanted me to become a Philly fan too. But when I saw the Polo Grounds and the Giants uniform and the green grass and all of this, I decided I was going to be a Giants fan. So that started in 1950. And then, of course, in 51, we had our famous year where we beat the Dodgers on the last day of the season, Bobby Thompson's famous home run. And my dad went to that game. And I'll never forget him coming through the front door. I'd heard the last 3 innings on the radio. And he came through the door and he says, "Guess where I've been today?" So I said, "You couldn't have been there." And he said, "Yeah, I went with 3 people from Merrill Lynch who we worked with. They all 3 left at the beginning of the bottom of the 9th. But I stayed." And he said, "Let this be a lesson to you. Baseball's never over till it's over." He said it before Yogi Berra did. And then the next day he invited me to the World Series. This was in the middle of the week. I'd never missed a day of school in my 5 years of going to school. And he said, "We're going to the World Series if you want to go." So that was October 4th, 1951, and I can remember that game like it was yesterday. So I think growing up in New York, you know, you think about being a boy in New York at that time. The Yankees were in the World Series every year. 47, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 55, 56. They were. Then the Dodgers, 47, 49, 52, 53, 55. Every one of those years, they're playing the Yankees in the World Series. The Giants, 51 and 54. So the center of baseball was New York. We used to have our debates, you know, who's the best center fielder? Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, Duke Snider. All 3 in the Hall of Fame. And Mantle came after DiMaggio. So just think about, you know, growing up as a kid loving baseball, New York City was the center of the baseball world. I think what doesn't change, though, over all that period of time is the beauty of the game of baseball. You know, how hard a game it is to play, and how when it's played well, you know, what a wonderful thing it is to see. And going there with your dad, as I went, and then going to games with your wife, and then your kids, and now my grandkids. Baseball gets handed down from generation to generation that way, and that makes it special. Well, I still have my season tickets, even though I'm a businessman, and I go to the games whenever I can. I'll never forget one game, what year was it, when Dravecky came back?
89.
89. And I'm with our head of produce of Safeway. I'm running Safeway at the time. And he comes into my office. He says, "Mr. Magowan, we really ought to be at this game today. Dave Dravecky's going to be pitching." I said, "Let's go." And so we went to the game, and I'll never forget that game when Dravecky was warming up. You know, the tremendous amount of emotion in the stadium.
A pretty emotional day.
It was. And then it was against Cincinnati. He pitched a terrific game. And so I tell that story just to say that even when I was working at Safeway, and even when I was working at Safeway around the country, not just here, but in Tulsa and Phoenix and Toronto and Houston, I kept in touch with the Giants as a fan during all those years.
Did you get a sense or get a little bit of a gut feeling in the post-86 season that maybe the Giants were onto something? Did you actually think?
Yes. Of course, we got Will Clark and Robbie Thompson came onto the team at that time. And Al Rosen came on too. So Al Rosen, of course, had a tremendous reputation. And Roger Craig showed up, and the Giants just changed. The whole atmosphere around the Giants changed with new players, but new management too. Yes. Bob Lurie was still there, but he was smart enough to hire a really good guy in Al Rosen, and Al put in some wonderful coaches, and was a great evaluator of talent, and before you knew it, the Giants were in contention again,
pretty quick, didn't it?
and in the World Series in '89.
So
And what strikes me is just so strange about the whole thing is there were the Giants in contention in '89, and then they were put up for sale in 1992, and it reminded me of the Dodgers and Giants in New York. The Dodgers won the World Series in 1955. The Giants won the World Series in 1954. 3 years later, they're both gone.
Yeah.
Gone from the biggest city in the country, the richest city in the world. And how can this be? I mean, how can teams that had that kind of history and success just disappear?